With real-time price information coming to old school RuneScape, a lot of you guys have been asking me how I find my correct price listings for overnight flips and investments alike. In this video, I'm going to go through some tips and tricks and my strategy for finding what price to list at overnight, as well as finding a good time to get into item investments. We're not going to waste any time today. I hopped over to the OSRS pricing wiki. I'm going to show you guys two different examples of items, one being a lower volume item and the other being a higher volume item, and how I analyze each item for a potential investment. Now, the first thing that I look at on my item is the daily volume. You can see here that we have about 1,000 Sanguesti staffs traded a day. It's very important that you keep an eye on the volume because that's going to tell you how volatile an item is over a longer period of time. The lower volume an item is, the more influence a buyer or a seller could have on the market, therefore guiding the price more so. Now, if there's only 1,000 of these traded daily, I would say that is a relatively low volume item. You don't really have to keep too much attention on the active margin at the moment. We're more interested in the price graphs for longer term flips. Now, we can see here that the Sanguesti staff has been trending downwards over the past week or so. Now, like I said previously, trend is very, very important. It's one of the most important things that you need to keep in mind when you are analyzing an item for a potential investment. So you can see here that the item is continuing to trend downward. We have at the beginning of the week the Sanguesti staff trading at about 77.7 mil, and currently we're looking at about a 66.7 mil Sanguesti staff. So very, very significant decrease in the price over the past week, and it doesn't look like we have any signs of this letting up anytime soon. We have seen some buybacks, as you can see right here, around March 19th. People were buying back into that Sanguesti staff, bringing the price up to about 72, 71 mil or so, and then it came right back down in price. Now, it's very important you keep the trend in mind because it's likely that this trend is going to continue until it reverses. And currently, I don't see any signs of this trend reversing, so we need to keep that in mind when we are thinking of what price to buy these at. Since we are on the weekly view for the Sanguesti staff, I'm going to go ahead and pop over to the daily view to give us a better understanding of what we might be able to list this thing price-wise overnight. So you can see that we still have an aggressive downtrend here. We saw about a couple hours ago it trading for 67.1 mil flat and then had a huge buyback in all the way going up to 68 mil, and then it's continued to aggressively come down yet again. Now I do imagine we will see another low of about 66 mil or so here overnight. You can see here that the buying offers were significantly lower than the selling offers up here, so there is a lot of downward pressure on the Sanguesti still, and even though the price has been recovering temporarily, I do imagine it will come back down again. Now, how does this play into my actual price listing? Well, if you look at it here, 67 mil is kind of where this thing hit overnight, or not overnight, excuse me, within the past couple of hours. So I would imagine that it's going to test that level again, or potentially even go lower. If I had to list these for an overnight flip, seeing that they're trading at about 67.2 mil right now, I would probably list them at about 66.8 mil or so, just going off that previous low here, and considering that they're only trading for about 67.2 mil as of right now, I do imagine that will come back down in price. If our analysis is correct, we'll be able to pick up a couple cheap Sanguesti staffs, maybe look to sell them around 68 mil flat the next day, giving us a nice little profit of around maybe like 600k or so, hopefully something like that, and we'll net a 600k profit on each one we're able to flip. It's really that simple, guys. There's not that much else that goes into it besides just looking at the graph and saying, hey, where has this thing been trading in the past 24 hours? What is the trend like on the weekly graph? If the trend is downwards on the weekly graph, you want to list a little bit lower than you think it might go. And if it's trending upwards, then you want to list a little bit higher than it might go. It's very important to follow the trend of an item. We've pulled up these sharks as well, and like I was saying previously, the volume really matters when it comes to price fluctuations, because the more volume an item has, the less it's going to fluctuate over a period of time. So you can see here that we have these sharks that are a relatively cheap item, cost about 850 for every shark you buy, and we have a volume of about 6.1 mil every single day. very highly traded item, which means overnight this thing is not going to fluctuate as much. Now currently it's advertising an 18 GP margin, which I have never seen on Sharks, so we're just going to ignore that for right now. And this graph is actually quite interesting, right? Because we see here on the daily view that the trend is actually going pretty stagnant. The thing has been trading back and forth all day, and recently we've seen a huge price boost in where these Sharks are trading. We're going to have to validate if that could be a legit buyback or not. But this is a very different situation on the Sharks because earlier this week you could see the Sharks trading for about 700 GP each, and we've had an aggressive uptrend on the Sharks all the way up to currently where it's about 860 GP. So looking at the daily graph, this could be a very legit buy-in, and people are trying to get in on their investment and buy some Sharks. Now, if I was going to flip this over a 24-hour period, this daily graph would be very important for me to utilize, right? So I would maybe list around, I don't know, since the item is trending upwards, 840 GP would be a solid buy. Get it right at that mid price. That way, if the item continues to trend upwards, that considering the weekly graph, which it most likely will keep going up, then we will actually be able to sell them back for a decent profit. You don't want to list too low in a high volume situation, especially when something is aggressively uptrending, because you'd hate to list it too low, buy not enough of the quantity of the item, and miss out on a lot of potential gains. So if I see an aggressive uptrend on a high volume item, I do list a little bit higher than normal. We can see here that we have a lot of buying activity as well on these Sharks. We had a decent buy from an individual here around, what was that, 13:30 in the day, and we had a massive buy-in a little bit later on in the day, 15:15. So you can see that there is a lot of activity as far as buying into these Sharks goes, and I do imagine that an upward trend will continue on these Sharks. A lot of people ask me as well, when they're overnight flipping, should they just sell the items back immediately when they log on? And that's really up to you. If you plan to play RuneScape immediately when you log in for the day, then honestly, I would sell the items immediately and just take that profit. But if you're going to sign in, relist your flips, and then log off for maybe work or some other obligation, then I do recommend listing them a little bit higher, again, utilizing the daily graphs to find that high price that you can list at. That's because you won't be playing the game, so you don't necessarily need the money. You might be able to squeeze a little bit more GP out of your flip. Very quick, short, and sweet guide today, guys. Next week, I will try to bring you a same exact guide just like this, but with some real life overnight flipping examples. That way you guys can see how I'm actually doing the item analysis and applying it in game. I don't have enough clips yet to actually give you a video on that, so I wanted to get this video out immediately, utilizing the real-time price information and how critical it is to actually getting some really nice and solid overnight flips. I've got a test for you guys trying to learn how to analyze items on the OSRS price tracker. Here's an example. Let's go through it together. Let me know in the comments below what price you would list these at overnight. And if you get really close to where my buy offer is, I will give your comment a heart. But I'm going to challenge you guys to come up with a price listing for the Armadillo crossbow. Just to walk you through it really quick, the daily volume on the Armadillo crossbows is 2,486, at least as of today. Now, if you look at the daily graph here, I'll let you analyze it on your own, but there's clearly some price movement on this item. And if we go to the weekly graph as well, you can see, again, you can see the price action there. Now, I don't want to tell you what price to list this at, but go ahead, go look at the Armadillo crossbow. Maybe use this video as an excuse to go look at it. Maybe it's a good overnight flip for you regardless, but I really want to know where you guys would list this thing overnight. Let me know in the comments. And again, if you get very close to where I would list this thing overnight, I will give your comment a heart. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You guys have been doing amazing work on my channel recently, and I can't thank you enough. Thank you to everyone who tuned into this one. Drop a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.